I'm Richard Gearhart, an intellectual property attorney specializing in patents, trademarks, and copyrights.
And I'm Elizabeth Gearhart, not an attorney, but I work at Gearhart Law doing the marketing, and I have my own startups.
Welcome, everybody, to Passage to Profit, the road to entrepreneurship, where we talk with entrepreneurs, small businesses, and discuss the intellectual property that helps them flourish. And today we have a great guest, Tim McConnehey, who is the founder of the Izzard Inc. Publishing Company, and he's going to be talking about getting published.
And then we have Jordan Schindler with Nufabrx. Unbelievable what this guy is doing. Anybody with any pain or anything or sleep problems even wants to hear what he has.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear more about this product. It's really off the charts innovative, and I'm looking forward to that discussion a lot. Um, but before we get to our distinguished guests, it's time for IP in the news. And I guess I'm carrying the ball on it this week because we have an interesting topic. And the topic is, does artificial intelligence that creates artistic works, is that copyrightable? And should it be copyrightable?
Well, and what about the base? I think the whole lawsuit is about where does it get the data from to go into its database to allow it to create these in the first place?
Right. And so the case that we're talking about today is an class action suit that was started by an artist who had been posting her works on a website called DeviantArt for a long, long time. And so Kelly, her name was Kelly, had painted sort of these fantasy paintings. Fantasy art where people were all like different colors and everything. It's well, if you saw the paintings, if you went to her website, you would see just exactly what I'm talking about. But in any case, the website DeviantArt created an AI engine, and it would go through all of the paintings on their website. So this was sort of a gallery, and it would borrow from the paintings and create new paintings based on the data that was on their website. And so a lot of the paintings that the AI engine created were looking a lot like some of the more established artists.
But wait a minute. So Kelly was putting her paintings on there for free. DeviantArt wasn't paying her for her artistic creativity.
Right.
She was doing it for free. So now they're going to take what they got for free and make money off it.
Right. And that's part of it. So it was a really I guess a real blow to her, and she was very unhappy with what she saw. A lot of the paintings were very similar to hers, and deviant art and even some of the legal scholars are taking the position, well, this is not copyright infringement. And I'm looking at this and I'm saying it's an interesting problem, right? Because other artists borrow from other artists all the time. So what difference does it make whether it's an AI engine or just another person that borrows the ideas, right?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'll just go back to when we were having some artwork done for Gearhart Law. I asked one of our attorneys, I said, I found this online. If we change it some, can we use it? And she said, no. She said, you need to buy the photo and then you can change it a little bit. But if you even change it a little bit, it still belongs to them. It's still what they created. So, no, that would be copyright infringement. So, where is the line? And they're bringing up fair use. So that means that unless you make it something radically new, that I don't know what is fair use.
Well, fair use is actually pretty tricky copyright doctrine that excuses some forms of copyright infringement. And so, without going into a lot of the details, it is really pretty much a case by case basis, and it depends on the level of copying, what it was copied for, whether it's whether it's done for profit. And so there's four factors that a court looks at when they're trying to determine that. But here is Andreas Guamadas, who's commenting. He says he's a legal scholar at the University of Sussex, and he gets different interpretation of what AI models are doing when they learn. He says the models are learning patterns from the original images and brushstrokes and scripts. And these are things that cannot be covered by copyright, according to him. So he doesn't think that any of this work is really protected.
But I guess the other question I would have is, what were the terms and conditions 20 years ago when she started uploading her artwork to this? Were the terms and conditions we can basically steal your artwork anytime we want and use it for anything we want? And if that's the case, then she doesn't have a case.
Yeah, I mean that's all good stuff. So anyway, it's time for Richard's roundtable, and we've beat this horse to death, but we do have some other folks on the show today. Tim McConnehey, welcome to the show, Tim. Why don't you give
Hey,
us?
thank you.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. You're in the world of copyright based on your business, which is uh, written creative works. Do you have any special thoughts on this case that we've been discussing?
First of all, I say push this one over to a great IEP attorney, which which we always say. So, I don't know the ins and outs, but I can tell you what we see in the publishing realm is we see that a lot of self-published authors, they believe that if something's out there that they can take it and they can use it, and that's something that I foresee is going to be a problem, especially with AI and what's coming down the pike of being able to track those images. So whenever we do anything with a cover designer or anything like that, we make sure that not only does the designer license that image or art, then they manipulate it, but we also do as well, because we just want to make sure we're protected. It's not worth a fight. So pay them.
Well, I think that's a great process for your company, and I do recommend that if you're doing a lot of creative things, that you do get competent counsel involved to help you make those steps. Jordan, welcome to the show. What are your opinions on this?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Looking forward to the discussion. I think it's going to be interesting, especially related to, we've all seen the rise in Chat GPT, and Google's now launching their own AI system. I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of these types of lawsuits coming up in the future. So I think it's a very, especially relevant topic of conversation. I tend to lean more on the people side, because sort of that's where I have grown the business, and I know how hard it is to start something from scratch. So my sort of IP attorney perspective would be, hey, could this company have actually just gone to the artist at the beginning and said, hey, are you okay with we do this? I mean, odds are she would have said yes. She was already uploading the art for free, and we probably would have solved this whole thing off the bat. So I think in most cases, just having an upfront conversation with someone is probably the easiest way to answer a lot of these questions.
I agree 100%. It's like this whole do it and ask for forgiveness later. I'm not into that at all. Right. Like, I feel like they could have handled it much better as well if they'd spoken to her first.
Right, or just communicated with all of the artists uploading, telling them what's going to happen, and they could opt in or opt out. I'm sure there's a lot of artists that would have opted in, because in a way, if there's other works out there that are similar to yours, maybe that helps promote your approach and your artwork. So maybe some people would see it as helpful, and other artists have purer motives. They just want their work to be seen and known. But then so maybe this would help them, but then there's other artists who really want to retain control of what the public sees and what they think of them. And so in those so again, I think Jordan hit it right on the head when he said,
right,
you'd really need to get permission, right? Which is, at the end of the day, for most copyright issues, the solution to just about everything is just like get permission of the person that if you want to borrow. So
kind of reminds me of a funny story in the law firm. So somebody a tech person decided that they were going to redesign the homepage of the Gearhart Law website. And I didn't find out until I went to post a blog there, and I freaked out.
It's completely different. Yeah.
Wait a minute, this is not what it's supposed
All
to
of the
look like.
yellows were orange, and yeah.
Into detail. But let's just say we immediately I told Richard, he's like, change it back.
Yeah. So
That
we
didn't
did.
work.
Well, thank you for that, Jordan. I think that was very insightful. And now it's time to get to the meat of the show. So today we have a special guest, Tim McConnehey from Izzard Inc. Publishing. So welcome to the show, Tim. And why don't you tell us what you do and what's going on?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. At Izzard Inc. Publishing, we're trying to flatten the publishing model is really what we're trying to do. If you look at it, if you're trying to get a book published and you want to work with Penguin Random House or Wiley or some of these other big players, you have about a 1 in 1,000 chance of getting the attention of a literary agent. And they're kind of the gatekeepers for traditional publishing. And so once you get their attention, then they, pass your book to 5 or 6 different people. And then you have about the same chances of getting published by a traditional publisher that's big time as you do winning the lottery. So what we're trying to do is flatten that model and help authors build their team and get the best book possible.
So what makes your team different from what's currently going on in the industry?
Yeah, I think what makes us really different is giving authors true, honest feedback and making sure that their book is publishable. If it's not publishable, we're going to hold it back and say, hey, this isn't quite ready, and this is the help you need in order to make it happen. And you find that a lot of people are great writers. They just don't have what we call an author platform to jump from. They don't have that audience. So a lot of times with their first time book, they need to build that audience, and that's what we help them with.
That's important. I dabbled in writing books a few times, and I've taken classes on it. And part of my problem was writing science fiction for young adults. A lot of the editors hate science. So they were like, we don't want science fiction books. You're crazy. But also, I read you have to have a huge marketing machine. You have to have a whole bunch of social media contacts before they'll even look at you.
Yeah, you're looking at about, if you don't have a platform of about 25,000 followers or more, you're not going to get picked up, or a literary agent's not going to look at you.
So that really the publishing business, they want people who are already known and sort of have a predetermined market, so to speak, or at least people they can reach out to start with. So how does somebody who maybe has a great book, has a great idea, they have a flair for writing, but they don't have the following yet. So how do they break into the world of publishing?
It's tough. First, you have to have good content, and that's the key. You look at the self-publishing market where anyone can publish and get things out there. Over 2 million people do it a year. Well, what's the problem with that? You haven't built your team. You don't know, it's like going and creating music without a producer, or a show without a producer. You really need to build that team of qualified people. And that's what we help authors do. We also, we analyze where they're at. We see what their potential is as an author. And then we match them with a really good team. The same people who work for Penguin Random House in the day, they moonlight for us and help our authors out, because in the end, they really want to just get down there. They got into publishing to help the authors, and that's what we do.
It seems like everybody's writing a book these days, and they're self-publishing it, and maybe they're throwing in a couple of pictures or something. And I don't know. There's tricks to getting on the Amazon bestseller list that I learned about from somebody.
So yeah, I mean, it seems like publishing has changed. You're kind of gaming the system a little bit.
People game the system, and a lot of books out there really aren't as good as books used to be, I have to say.
You're hitting on that point. They're not as good as they used to be because they're not going through any kind of vetting process. you need an editor to pick things apart. You need to say, hey, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. And you're right. You can game the system. You know, being an Amazon bestseller, what, they have like 16,000 categories that can update every hour. I think we looked at it. You could have over 3 million Amazon best-selling authors a year, you know? So yeah, it sounds great, but at the end of the day, it's like, okay, does this mean anything? And so when somebody says, hey, we can guarantee you're an Amazon bestseller, well, yeah, I mean, I guess if you publish a book and you're out of 2 million a year and 3 million could be, you know, added to the Amazon list, well, you better be an Amazon bestseller, right?
Right.
Right. So if I came to you with the manuscript, because I always have a book in the back of my head, I have one right now that I want to write. And I have never passed muster with any editors that have ever looked at what I've written. What's the first thing you would help me do? Would you'd look at it and you'd say, okay, well, you know, this might, it's a nonfiction, it's about a cat. And you might say this is okay content. People might want to read this, but the way you wrote it really is awful. So then what do you do?
You're a good
Yes.
writer. You're being too hard on yourself.
Oh, well, thank you.
So-
But anyways, but I haven't been able to sell anything. So what would you do?
Well, first off, you know, we want to, our approach is a solution-based approach. We want to figure out how that writing can be publishable. How is your manuscript publishable? So we take it to 2 independent editors. They read the first, you know, part, and a lot of times they'll read all the way through it. But they're looking for pros and cons. They're looking for how this is marketable. They're looking for actionable items in that manuscript or tendencies like you're telling and not showing. That's a big one that we get. It's much more difficult to show your story than it is just to say, hey, here it is. And that's what we really try and do is say, okay, here's kind of the problems with it. Have a moment, be unhappy with us. It's the tough love process, but then you're looking for an action plan. It's like, now what? How do I move forward? And that's what we're really good at, is saying, here's the type of editing you need. You need a developmental edit, then you need a line editor, and we believe things will be good to go from there. So that's our approach, and we've found that it's worked out really well. We've had a lot of first-time authors come in and then leave with award, you know, winning books and Publishers Weekly starred reviews.
Wow, that's quite a track record. So when you're talking about showing versus telling, can you sort of give an example of what that would look like?
Oh boy, I'm not a good writer, but I think it's like the same thing that we try and do. You know, a story tells. When you show somebody, when you take it through, you know, I was having to explain the publishing industry the other day, and I was saying fragmented, and it's the status quo, and it didn't really resonate with people until I told them that, hey, look how hard it is to get into the industry. I showed them, you know, the landscape, and that resonated much more with people. So it's really showing, you know, instead of just saying, hey, felt bad. Well, show me that the protagonist felt bad, right? Show me by actions and what happened. And that's what our editors are good at. I'm not a good writer. I guess I shouldn't be saying that here, but I always leave it to the experts. But that's what they tell me.
Okay. Well, I sort of get that.
So
So
something like Olivia felt really bad about what she just said, or versus Olivia looked down at the ground and a little tear came out of the corner of her eye. Would that be something like that?
I think something like that would definitely work. You kind of see a difference there. Well, yeah, she felt bad, but now you're showing how she felt bad with an expression. It
Right.
resonates much better with people.
By Joe, I think she's got it.
I
Pain stays mainly in the plane.
So,
Yeah.
so Tim, do you have the marketing piece for people then? Because we were talking about that before. Like, if you don't have a bunch of followers on social media, forget it.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, yeah, you have to get out there, you have to do it, but in the world of books and publicity and PR, you want to go with an agency that's selective. You want to go with a publicist who's selective and knows that they can get it in there. So sometimes you have to write the book, you have to show them because they ultimately want you to be successful as well. And so it's hard if they don't pick up on it, or if you can't find the right publicist to pick up on it, it's hard to get it out there. It still can be done. I mean, you go through and there's a great, Book Publishers Weekly, Book Life is a great place to get reviews from. But you really need to build your reviews first and say, this is what the critics say. And then you try and say, hey, will you rep my book? Can we get it out there? That's how we've had success, and we've seen some authors do really well.
That's great. So it really does seem like you are adopting a more sort of almost traditional approach to publishing, but you're adding some tools and some opportunities for lesser known writers who maybe haven't gotten through the door at the major publishing companies, right?
That's exactly it. And the other big difference, though, is authors will pay us. They pay for the very beginning. They pay for the manuscript assessment because we're adding value there. We find that authors who pay for the process are also much more vested, and they do a better job. They take the feedback from the editors better. So that's an important part of the program that we've seen that's elevated authors' writing, is just more personal investment.
So, well, that's amazing, Tim. So we have to take a break, a commercial break. We'll be right back with more Passage to Profit right after this. Welcome back, everybody, with Passage to Profit. I'm Richard Gearhart, and my lovely co-host, Elizabeth Gearhart, is also here. And we're talking with Tim McConnehey about publishing and his company, Izzard Inc. Publishing. I have kind of a silly question here, but I guess, do people even read books anymore? I mean, with the internet and so many other things going on, you've got video games, you've got Oculus. I mean, are people still reading books? Do you have any stats on that?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. If you look at the publishing industry, it's stayed fairly stagnant, and maybe it's gone down 1 or 2%. Over the last 5 or 10 years. You're starting to see the COVID trend of everyone writing and reading kind of go back to pre-pandemic trends. We saw that happen in around September, October of last year. But yeah, people are still reading. I think where you kind of come back and go, well, are people not reading? It's because there's so many books out there. I mean, there's 30, 40 million of them just on Amazon, and it's much easier. So there's just a sea out there.
Right.
I'm still reading.
And I always look for, and it's interesting because there's Goodreads now. And I don't know if you help your authors get their books listed on Goodreads, but Goodreads is a site where you can go and kind of check out what books there are and what people are saying about them.
Yeah. I mean, you've got Goodreads. I think that's also an Amazon company. You've got book clubs that are still happening, and you've got audiobooks. You're just consuming it sometimes a little bit different. We've seen audiobooks really grow over the last 2 years. To me, I still consider that reading, but I don't know. Maybe others don't.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. It's nice to know that at least some people still have the patience to wade through an entire book, right? You hear so much about people having shorter attention spans and busier lives, and to really take the time to enjoy a book, I think is a great thing. I mean, I've had books that have made a real impact on me, right? When I was young, I still remember them and go back to them. So I am a fan of literature. I'm not trying to be difficult here.
It's a question that I have for you, Tim, because I am interested in this. I do have a book I want to write, many books I want to write, but one particular right now. If I came to you and I had the manuscript, maybe I wouldn't even have it completely done, but I would just come to you and say, does this look like something that you could work with? What would be the whole process? And do you have somebody that did something like that is now selling a bunch of books? And what did they do?
Yeah, a lot of people, a lot of authors we find are just not confident in their writing. It's like, well, I can't send this to my family. My mom's always going to tell me that I do a good job. The people who I'm asking for feedback, they either aren't industry experts, or they're just going to tell you, yeah, that's really good, because they don't want to hurt your feelings. We've seen relationships, family relationships gone because of, hey, can you read this book?
Hey,
So we do like to see it. And
everything my wife writes is amazing.
Really?
See,
So I'm trying to preserve
she
our
doesn't
family
need it. Doesn't need
I don't
us.
think so. No. I mean, I would, you know what? I would love to be able to write like Stephen King. I don't always like every single story that he
with
does.
Stephen King.
No, he is
I've-
such a great writer.
I've watched a lot of his movies. I don't see why he's so popular.
The books.
Oh, he's a writer? Oh,
But
didn't know that.
No, he knows how to grab your attention and keep it. Right. And
That's that's what a developmental editor really helps out with a book, is they help you grab the attention. They say this section made sense, this one needs a rewrite. And if you get editors and people who have been in the industry for 20-30 years, they can pick this stuff right out. And much of the stuff we found, if you're just an average writer, we've taken average writers, and have turned them into award winners. And it's really the person you hire. So we did a middle grade book, and we were able to match her with one of the editors from the Hunger Games. And when you saw that come in to when it came out, vastly better. It's who you hire and it's who you work with that's going to do it. And editors can't write. They're the first to tell me that. They said, I can't take over for you, but I can tell you the holes, I can tell you some ideas, and I can tell you some solutions to make it better. So yeah, if you're looking at just the first section of a book, by all means, bring it on in and say, hey, am I at least going the right direction?
yeah, you know what that reminds me of? When we lived in Atlanta, our son was on these sports teams. Now he was in grade school, right? There were some kids that were doing better than others on these sports teams, and come to find out their parents had them taking private lessons, right?
Of course, right. That's
This
the
reminds
American
me of.
way.
You get the private lessons, so of course you beat the competition out.
But I did want to ask a question, though. I mean, have editors always played such a strong role in books? So if you go back to some of the masters, or the classics, do you know, were there editors back in those days that were doing the same things for authors then? Like if you were dealing with, Hemingway or Faulkner, or any of the older classics. I always thought that these people just sat down and they typed stuff out, and that's how you made a great book. But I guess they had editors back in the olden days too.
I would assume so. Without doing any more in-depth research, that's what I would assume. We've worked with an author. He was very, he was very good back in the 60s, 1960s, and kind of before that, self-published. But even he worked with a handful of editors. It wouldn't have been the same without who he picked to do it. It's really hard if you think about this. If you're writing, you need that third party view to make sure you're connecting with your audience. Are my goals and objectives being reached? And we sit down with an author and we try and understand their goals and objectives before, so we can hit that target. Because when you're in the middle of it, you're running a business, and you're in the weeds, you kind of can't see how that's being received. And that's an important part. And so I would assume they've always had editors or feedback from others, at least a small team.
Mm-hmm. Do our books making money now? I mean, should you embark on this journey if you're expecting to become rich? Can you talk a little bit about that?
You can, but I'm afraid there's no such thing as an easy path in life. If you're coming to us saying, hey, let me just make a lot of money, it's not going to be easy. The authors that are very profitable from us, they've put a lot of time into it. They've built their platform. It's taken 3, 4, 5 books in order to get there. So we're very upfront and honest with authors. If they come to us saying, hey, I just want to make a lot of money, that's kind of a red flag for us. Just because there needs to be a lot of passion behind it, because it's a hard process. It's really hard.
Right. A lot of the people that I know that are writing books are doing it to promote their brand. they're not really expecting to make a lot of money from the book, but then they can say, I have a book. Here's my book. And they can say they're a published author on their website. They can say they're an Amazon best-selling author because they gained the system. And
Right?
it gives them credibility, right?
It does. I think if you're doing that for a business, yeah, I think it's wonderful. We worked with cookbook chefs and authors, where they wanted to get their recipes out there. They can meet a whole new audience. It's a great way, for me, instead of listening to somebody do a speech or paying a lot for an in-person meeting, I can just go and say, okay, let me read your 9-hour book, or, your 300-page book, and let me get the most out of it for $15. I just think it's still very viable.
So do you think there's a book in every person? Somebody once said they thought that there was a book in every person. Do you think that's the case? Is it just getting the right chemistry or the right information?
If I'm sitting on a plane and somebody asks me what I do for a profession, I lie. I'm gonna, I just put it out there because it's happened so many times where I've had to sit there for 2.5 hours and listen to the story, and how are they going to tell it? And this, I do believe everyone has a book in them, and we've even done somebody who wrote a 100-page cat eulogy in a book, and put the name of their cat on the front of it, and so that's how they dealt with the grief. I really truly believe that there's a book in everyone, even it may be every cat.
I could definitely write books about most of my cats, but this one in particular, I started a whole podcast around him. So
is there a market for cat books? We want to know.
I don't think so. I don't think that one did really well. We let the author, we helped with that one a little bit, but we said, hey, you're on your own for the rest of this part.
Oh no! I'm in trouble with my cat book.
Podcasts are a whole different story. They're gold.
Right.
There you go.
No, that's true. But Richard has been doing some publicity, and the guy told him, well, since you have a radio show, you're probably okay without a book. But most people that are trying to get publicity write a book.
Well, it really is. Yeah. You see it, I've had help writing one for my business. It's there, it's out there. You want to share it. It's also a great way to make extra money, especially if you're speaking. We've worked with, his name's Dan Clark, and he's a Hall of Fame speaker. And when he goes and he speaks, 100, 2, 3, 4, 500, 1,000 books, he can just book the speaking gig and send a book out with them. It's just a way to make extra revenue too.
Well, there you go. I think though, especially if you go through a reputable publisher, having written a book does give you credibility and authority, right? And so that credential means that you're somebody that people should listen to, in theory, right? And
reputable's the key,
right?
And if you do it right, you work with the right editors, like we talked about, it just only strengthens not only your book, but I've seen it strengthen their business. Sure. They can be more concise in their message. They can say it better, and they know what's going to resonate because they've gone through the process saying this resonates with readers. This can resonate in my business. So yeah, they kind of go together really well.
Well, that's great. So we have to take time for another commercial break. Tim, this has been fascinating, and thank you for sharing your insights about the publishing industry and Izzard Inc. Publishing. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about your company and your services?
Yeah, we're izzardink.com, izzardink.com. Happy to chat about any projects that they have.
Like lizard without the L.
Right. So we'll be back right after this. And you're listening to Passage to Profit with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart, our special guest today, Tim McConnehey. And we'll be back with more Passage to Profit right after this. You're listening to Passage to Profit, everybody. This is Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart, and we just heard from Tim McConnehey, and really nice update on the publishing industry, what Izzard Inc. Publishing is doing. Lots of great insights. If you haven't had a chance to hear the whole interview, you can pick it up on our podcast. It's Passage to Profit Show, anywhere you get your podcasts. Right. And now it is time for Elizabeth to talk about her project. So what's going on with you and your stuff?
Well, so I have two projects going on besides this and the marketing at Gearhart Law right now. One of them was called Fireside, but I had to rebrand it to Blue Streak. It's a video directory of small businesses online, and I've been refining it as I've been doing it. So over COVID, I interviewed a bunch of business owners, and I've kind of changed the format. I'm getting a new website done, and I'm still interviewing people. And I really had to think hard about what I want to do with this, because the website's kind of expensive and where I want it to go. But what I realized when I was talking to my website developer, he said, well, maybe you should focus on a specific industry, etc. And I thought, who do I want to hang out with, right? If I'm going to conferences or events, who do I want to be around? Because that's where my passion is going to be. So I realized that it is small business owners that I want to be around, or business owners. And this directory is different because it's not based on location. All the other directories and the website I'm using now for the directory all start with the root of where are you located and find somebody near me. This is the directory for the new normal because it is based on business type and business services for businesses, and it is not location based. In fact, I do have some people I interviewed that are location based, but I might put them off to the side, and my website guy said, keep them on there. But really, this is focused on people that don't need to be in your town to work with you.
No, that sounds great. And I hope that, I am involved with small businesses. So hopefully you'll continue to hang out with me too.
Well, yes, of course.
As long
And
as
you
I
have a
behave
video on
myself.
there. You
That's
have a
always
video
the
on there.
underlying rule, right?
Yes. And then my other project that I started recently, this is kind of a story, but I'll try to make it short, is we adopted a kitten, and he came up from Kentucky to New Jersey. And after I'd had him for a little bit, he started scratching his face. He started around his eyes, and I've taken him to vet after vet after vet. And nobody can figure out exactly what's going on with this poor little guy. It's driving me crazy. He's had medicine all his life. It's like, anyway, so Richard actually had the idea. He's like, why don't you find a community that can help you? So I said, well, why don't I start a podcast? And the next day I met somebody who's really into cats and really wanted to do the podcast with me. So her name is Danielle Woolley. So Danielle and I are doing a podcast on cats. We're inviting people to come and talk about their cats.
Called the Jersey Podcats.
The Jersey Podcats. Yes. Right. Our son came up with Podcats, and then that was kind of taken. So we did the Jersey Podcats. And we have people come on and we just talk to them about their cats and issues they're having with their cats, fun things their cats are doing. The first few episodes were a little heavy because we had people that were kind of into heavier cat issues, and we're like, no, this has to be more fun. So now we're getting people on that are kind of funny and that we can joke around with. People like Richard.
Right. I haven't been on yet, though. So no, you said you wanted somebody goofy for the show. And of course, you looked at me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I'm down with that. So
yeah. So anyway, so that's where I'm at. We've released, I think, 6 episodes now of the Jersey Podcats. We're having a lot of fun. We're talking to a lot of people.
A lot of people are downloading podcasts too. So
yeah, and a lot of people want to be. We have a huge waiting list, but we're always looking for good people anyway. So
let me guess, they all have cats?
Yeah, most of them. Yeah,
most of them. Okay. No, anyway, we should get on. Sorry.
Okay, so let me introduce our next presenter. Jordan Schindler has Nufabrx, and this is so innovative and cool. And I want it, and I want it for my son because I think he would love it, especially. So Jordan, please tell us what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's great to be here. Love the show.
Thanks.
Super simple. We're all wearing clothing right now. Hopefully a lot of the listeners are wearing clothing. We put
if you're not, you don't have to put anything on.
That's right. That's right.
Just wait, as long as you're by yourself.
Disclaimer, we don't judge. But What we do is we put medicine into clothing. It's that simple. So instead of having to take a pill or use a cream or a patch, what if you could just get dressed in the morning to solve your health and wellness needs? And so we've developed a technology that embeds vitamins, supplements, medications in your clothing, and that's effective through multiple wash cycles. So, for example, it might be a line of topical analgesics. So think about a pain reliever like Icy Hot or Biofreeze in a sock, a knee sleeve, a back brace. It might be melatonin in your pillowcase to help you fall asleep at night, or it even might be a hat with Rogaine to help regrow hair. And ultimately, I know, the future is here.
The possibilities are endless. Quit tapping my head.
That's
you can't
right.
see my bald spot on YouTube.
So ultimately, what we're solving for is patient compliance, right? We're all increasingly busy. We're doing all these cool startups and all these things. And sometimes we forget to take pills or use creams as directed. It's hard to change consumer behavior, but we all get dressed in the morning. Clothing contacts our skin all day, every day. And it's sort of the perfect platform for simplifying health and wellness outcomes. And that's this category that we pioneered called healthwear. So we see the day where no longer are people going to the store and buying a garment simply based on color or size or brand, but truly based on what health benefit you want from your garment.
Well,
Right.
how did you come up? I mean, how did this idea come up? Was this kind of your vision, or tell us a little bit where this started?
Yeah, so I'll take you back in time almost 10 years ago now. I was in college at the University of Washington in Seattle. And like a lot of college kids, suffered from bad skin and learned about the link between your pillowcase and bad skin. And so as you sleep, dirt and oil builds up, clogging your pores, and ultimately went to the dermatologist and was recommended to wash my pillowcase 2 to 3 times per week, which, as you can imagine at the time, as a college age male, was never going to happen. We're almost a decade later, and it's still never going to happen. But that's what got me thinking about how do you create a benefit from a garment or fabric, something that contacts your skin all day, every day. And so started researching patents, got connected to MIT University and some drug delivery scientists, and then actually came out to North Carolina to be in the heart of textile manufacturing advanced materials. And so ultimately that's where we started. And this company has led to this intersection between traditional textile apparel and pharmaceuticals. And so we are this platform company that can deliver all of these different applications more conveniently through a garment that you're already wearing.
Well, that is very visionary. I know through my work as a patent guy, we've worked with antimicrobial technologies in garments where the idea was to reduce the bacteria on somebody's skin from sweat or what have you. And so, but my question to you is, if they're clothing that's delivering, say, pharmaceuticals, is there an FDA component there where you need to get some sort of approval, or is that pretty easy, pretty straightforward?
Yeah, absolutely there is. So all of our products are actually made here in North Carolina in clean rooms. So we have to go through all of the qualifications that any other drug OTC product would have. So ultimately it depends on what ingredient you're using and what claims you're making. So if you're starting with something that's a cosmetic or a drug, it might fall under the monograph. If it's something that's like a hydrocodone, right, that's a much more regulated compound that would require a new drug application, which is a 3 to 5 year process. So we're staying today in sort of OTC cosmetic, lower regulated. The FDA, in essence, says in the case of pain relief, here are the levels for safe, effective pain relief. If you can deliver within these levels, here are the claims you can make. So temporary relief of minor aches and pains associated with strains, spasms, bruises. Very similar, let's say, to the classification of Icy Hot or Biofreeze or any other topical analgesic. So that's the space that we play in today. But ultimately, yeah, we consider ourselves as a drug delivery device, right? To your comment on antimicrobial, this is really the next generation of that, where there's actually a garment that acts as a reservoir system that can deliver ingredients to the wearer, to the body. And we actually have our own drug delivery lab here in North Carolina at the University of Charlotte. We actually do comparison studies and measure release via a garment versus a cream. And so ultimately what we found is that in the case of a cream, most people typically don't do it every 3 to 4 hours as directed. They're not really measuring out a dose. It's sticky, it's messy, it gets into your clothing. Versus if you are able to have a consistent rate of release versus an 8 or 10-hour day through a compression garment, you're actually getting a more effective dose that's penetrating further into the dermis and epidermis than that cream where you get that roller coaster of release over time. And so ultimately, to come back to your question, right, we have to follow all the FDA procedures, even though we're making a t-shirt. And so it's been this really interesting evolution of supply chain because, I mean, I use the analogy of a bottle of aspirin, right? Like if that bottle is supposed to have 100 pills and shows up with 97, you got a massive problem. If my t-shirt has a little too much white or black yarn in it, nobody really cares. And so we've had to rethink that GMP, good manufacturing practices, all the way through the entire textile supply chain.
So Jordan, so you're not just like taking a tube of icy hot and smearing it all over a sock and saying here. There's a lot of research and complicated technology behind this, right?
Exactly right. Our early funding actually came out of grants from Department of Defense. There's a lot of military applications as well, right? You think about a soldier hiking 40 or 50 miles a day with a heavy backpack on. Certainly doesn't want to carry extra weight or extra medicine and not going to stop in the middle of a battlefield and rub a cream on their foot. And so whether it's a pain reliever in a uniform, a stimulant to keep soldiers awake, antifungal for different battlefield conditions, there's a lot of inherent interest there on the military side. And so a lot of what we do is we actually have to develop that active ingredient. We've actually developed a proprietary way of embedding it into a yarn and then tailoring the rate of release to correspond to any other topical cream or pill. And so we have a number of issued patents on the technology. And it's interesting, you look at sort of the patent landscape, who else is in our space? It's actually Google and Apple and Fitbit, right? It's a technology play. While it's a garment platform, ultimately what we've created is actually a technology.
This is really cool. And you're actually doing shoes too, right? So we had talked, you'd mentioned plantar fasciitis before we started. Like, I don't know if people know what that is, but it just makes your feet hurt really bad. Do you have shoes that help with that?
Yeah, we've got socks as well. So you think about I'm at a trade show or I'm working out or running a marathon. I don't want to stop and rub a cream on my body. And so if you can get that consistent rate of pain relief all day, you actually have a much easier way to simplify behavior. And that's the same that our retail buyers said as well. So I mean, you can buy our products today at Walmart, Target, CVS, Walgreens, in the pharmacy. And in sitting down with the retail buyers, in 2 minutes, they go, I get it. There's this huge correlation between people buying braces and pain creams. Why not just put the two things together, right? I twist my ankle, I'm probably buying a brace and a pain cream. It's two products, two supply chains. In this case, it's one product, simplified behavior, better environmental footprint, and it's easier for the consumer.
No, it sounds like a win-win-win. So what products are actually out there on the market now that your company is marketing?
Yeah, there's lots of wins to go around for everybody.
Yeah.
So you can buy our products that are pretty much for any joint or muscle ailment. So we have an ankle, we have a knee, we have a wrist, we have an arm. We just launched a back and a neck. Ultimately, we sent a note to our consumers and they said, what hurts, right? And in this work from home era, everyone's hunched over, as I am, back hurts, neck hurts. And so those were the latest two products that we actually just launched early this year as a response to what do consumers really want and need in their daily lives.
So you're selling these a number of places. Who's your typical buyer? Do you know?
Oh, we absolutely know. So it's typically 55 plus, someone that suffers from chronic pain or arthritis, taking multiple pain pills a day, worried about liver or digestive system issues, right? Why does this person have to take a pill when their foot hurts, right? Why can't they just apply something directly to the point of pain? And so if you can simplify behavior for that person, they inherently get what we're doing. And then secondary audience is much younger than that. It's athletes. It's people that are playing sports, that are running a marathon. Their body's hurt and they need something to solve that while they're in the middle of a race or a game.
That sounds great. Does this work with treatments for different kinds of mental conditions. Like I would like a Valium t-shirt, please.
I don't think that's happening anytime soon.
That's on the future roadmap, right? But it's really anything that can be delivered topically through the skin, either a cream or a patch, you can deliver through a garment form factor.
Right.
And so there's a lot of applications. I mean, we sort of joke, but we get requests, hey, I want a headband for my hangover, right? Like there are certain ingredients that can actually be delivered through your skin into your bloodstream. And so certainly on the roadmap for the future for us.
So I went on your website and I was kind of shocked at the price of these because they're not as expensive as I thought they would be. They really, the price is a good deal, and they last for 15 washings about, is that right?
That's exactly right, or 150 wear hours of use. Yeah, we wanted to price these things as cheaper than buying a pain cream and a brace. This thing will last for 4 to 6 months depending on use, and it's about $19.99, right? It's actually a much better value than the alternative.
Right. For brand new technology like this, I think that's a really good deal. So how many of these can you wear at a time? Like, could I put one on, one on my back, one on my feet, one on my shoulder?
I'm gonna have, let's see, today I'm gonna wear the hangover headband, and I'm going to wear the Tylenol ankle brace. And
It's funny because we often joke about doing a full body Snuggie. Like one of our employees got into a car accident, and we're like, "Can you just make a full body suit?" And ultimately, you can control the dose via our technology when we're making them, and so you can have a lower strength version that's a full body versus a more concentrated extra strength for doctors' offices. And so we're actually able to tailor that dose up or down as desired.
Yeah, well, we get the onesie with the laxative, right? So
I'm gonna let you go down that rabbit hole.
Wearing a onesie and taking a laxative. No way.
Well, yeah, there's inherent dangers in some of these things, right? So,
Yeah, we're gonna come up with this stuff, Richard. Honestly.
but you also, I mean, what about fashion and style? I guess it doesn't matter too much if you're talking about, socks, but I guess I'm just trying to think of like it, if
Well,
it's like underwear or something that you would wear under other garments, it's not really an issue, right?
well,
So,
and that's really the cool part about what we do. So we're actually only providing and creating the yarn, which is a precursor that goes into any garment that you're wearing. And
mhm.
so our yarn might actually only be 5 or 10% of that garment, right? In the case of a sock, you might only want pain relief in the ankle or in the toes. And so we'll actually partner with leading apparel brands to actually create and implement this into their existing product lines. So you can imagine a Nike sock with Icy Hot, a Lululemon garment with Olay moisturizer, all powered by Nufabrx technology, but you don't actually sacrifice anything on the fashion and design side because our yarn is always on the inside where it contacts the skin. And so you can do whatever patterns or companion materials that you're looking for in that garment.
Yeah, it's a perfect excuse to buy new clothes on a regular basis, right?
Absolutely.
So
That heal you.
that, yeah. So no, this is amazing, Jordan. Where can people find out more about your products?
They can certainly go to nufabrx.com, nufabrx.com, or any local pharmacy, Target, Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, next to the other sleeves and braces, and they can check us out.
Well,
Excellent.
I thank you for that, and I think you're ushering in an entirely new wave for the future of healing clothing, which is just it's just an amazing thing. So
Right.
congratulations on bringing this to the market, and I
And
hope.
something I'm definitely going to buy in the very near future. I have to
But
say.
we'd be happy to send you some. But yeah, it's really all about category creation, right? This is a new category
Mhm.
of garments, and that's what we're trying to create in healthwear.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, now we need to move on to Scott Wallace with I'm the Chef Too. And he has another product that makes people's lives happier. So this is kind of like the product that makes people happy show.
Yeah.
So,
Well, books are make people happy, right?
yes.
They're
And writing your own book makes you happy. So this is like, let's make people happy show.
all right.
So Scott, tell
I'm
us
down for
about,
that.
yes, tell us about I'm the Chef Too.
Well, First off, Tim, my book's coming. It's going to be in crayon, so hopefully you can get that through. And Jordan, my previous life was in med tech, and I'm very fascinated in what you're doing. That's very, very cool. I'm the chef too. Is an educational company, very different than what I did in my previous life, but it's an educational company that does curriculum-based cooking kits for children. So we teach kids STEM through the vessel of cooking. We do it theme-based. So they learn through a theme, through a recipe, and we make education fun. We do this through our e-commerce website. We sell nationwide, and we're breaking into Canada in next month or two. And so, yeah, we teach kids STEM and make education fun.
So can you give us some examples of the kinds of kits that your company sells?
Absolutely. So all of them have a theme base. So one of our best sellers is a galaxy donut. So they make a donut with a galactic glaze, but they learn about the solar system. They learn about constellations. They actually learn how gravity, how heavy you are based on the gravity on the planet that you're on. So they can calculate how much you weigh on Pluto versus Earth or the moon. And so, that's one of them. Another one is doing an erupting volcano cake. So we learn about, the Earth, the layers of the Earth. And then we actually teach chemical reactions when they use baking soda and vinegar to actually erupt their volcano cake.
These are amazing projects. I find that the notion of connecting heaviness and weight with a donut seems to make sense to me.
Since donuts make you fat.
Since donuts make me fat. So would they end up with like little pictures of the solar system in the glaze? Is that kind of how it works? Or maybe you could just like walk through how one of these kits, evolves, and so that.
Great question. So like with the Galaxy Donut, what we do is they actually make a glaze, and then we give them the food coloring, and they swirl it around and they dip it. When they pull it up, it actually has what it looks like a galaxy. It's really just a vibrant color scheme of what you would see if you were looking into the night sky.
There was one I saw on your website that had little animal shapes. Do you give cookie cutters too with some of these, or?
Yeah, so every month, so we do subscription based, and then we have our a la carte kits. So those are previous subscriptions. Our model is to make 36 kits in the next 36 months. And every one of our kits come with the dry ingredients, which we produce in our food manufacturing facility. And then the specialty items, which will be the silicone molds if you're making a donut or if you're cutting a cookie. One of the kits that we have is they make a medieval castle. So they get the cutting tools to make that. And then we give them the silicone that actually presses into the fondant that we give them so that they can actually make the walls and make it look like a medieval castle.
Oh, that sounds
So
like
this
fun.
is kind of like gingerbread houses on steroids, right?
Yes. My partner in life and my boss in work, Lisa Wallace, this was her brainchild. And it's when she came up with the idea, she was like, listen, I need to talk to you. And I was like, okay, what's up? By the way, she was 8 months pregnant with her third child. And when I'm getting back from the operating room and I hear, I need to talk to you at 9 o'clock at night, that's never a good thing to hear. And she was like, listen, I have this idea. And I'm like, okay. She's like, I want to teach STEM through the vessel of cooking. We have a son that's special needs, and she was really connecting with him through the kitchen. She goes, there's STEM and there's cooking. There's nothing that comes together. And I was like, well, it's a great idea. And I was like, how can I help? She goes, well, I know nothing about running a business. I'm like, okay, we'll figure that out. She's like, so I want to pick your brain. I need $500 and I just need your support. I'm done and done. That was on a Tuesday. On Friday, a couple questions through the week, she comes, hey, I need to talk to you again. I'm like, oh God. I'm like, 2 for 1. I was like, so remember that idea? I'm like, yeah, the cooking thing. She's like, yeah, have good news and bad news. I'm like, we always start with good news. What's up? She goes, well, I have our website set up. My LLC has been submitted. I'm under budget, and my next class is tomorrow. I go, Jesus, what's the bad news? She goes, you're my assistant. And that's what made, that was the birth of I'm the Chef Too.
That's amazing. So, so what have been some of your biggest challenges in moving forward with your business? What are some of the mountains you've had to climb?
Great question. A million. The biggest challenges for us is adapting to what the market was looking for. We started off as a rolling kitchen summer camp business, and COVID actually put us out of business. We had just signed up, we were just commercializing, and we had had 600 campers that had pre-registered in March of 2020, and the lockdown happened. And we're like, we bought all the supplies, probably like 60 grand in for the year. And Lisa and I looked at each other and go, what are we going to do? I'm like, well, let's box them up and sell at-home summer kits. And it's like, sure, I have no idea how to do that, but we'll figure it out. So, literally we started building these kits in our kitchen, and we had to learn how to be a service company to becoming an e-commerce company. And we did that on the fly in the lockdown. We couldn't even find toilet paper. We were trying to find people that could sell us bulk materials. And so that was a huge challenge. And then it's like, okay, how do we get our name out there? How do we make I'm the Chef Too a household name? Going into the digital marketing, talking about hey, people need to know you before they'll buy from you. How do we make ourselves a presence? And in developing that, and we figured that out through partnerships. We banked a lot on other people's network and just digital marketing, figuring out what our customers wanted to hear, and then multiplying. And then also not falling in love with any one kit. Like kits that we've made that I loved, I'm like, why aren't people buying this? They're not buying it because it's not their market, right? So it's letting the things die that aren't working and working with what our customer base is telling us to do. And that's been a huge thing for us. It's like, listen to the ambassadors, the people that are telling us what we need to be, and following that, and continuing to create iterations of our business to make us better. And it's always gone through, and we make lots of mistakes. It's only making the mistakes once if possible, and then growing from those mistakes.
Well, and I love that. I mean, we've done previous shows with people, and the theme is listen to what your customers want. Not everybody wants what you want. So I don't know if I'm going to write a cat book now after this. But
if it's in your heart, you should do it.
But what I will say is you guys were really smart to move into a space that was just developing, that had been developing for a few years, which was these at-home cooking kits. So those had been around for a while, but they were always dinners for adults, right? I don't know that there were a lot of these super creative, awesome looking at-home cooking kits that combine science and art for kids. So you did a twist on it, but you still were in a category that people recognize.
Right. So, and I want to point out too is that Scott and Lisa took a calculated risk when they moved from the service-based business to the e-commerce business without having any experience in the e-commerce business. And so, sometimes entrepreneurs need to do stuff like that, right? It's not a wild risk, but it's a calculated risk, right? And if that hadn't worked, you would have had to come up with something else, right? So, but fortunately, it all worked out for everybody. So, congratulations on having the courage to take those steps. And now it's probably bigger than you could have ever been with, you know, the
Right.
service-based business that you had before, right? So,
Absolutely. It's, yeah, for me, it's like, if the only option to jump is to jump, you jump, right? And so there is no fail. You just continue to do what you need to do. Like, for us, it's always trying to create the better mousetrap. And and we're on our like fourth or fifth iteration of our business. And every time we come out leaner, better, smarter, and we just try to continue to adapt to what the market's asking for. And, you know, continue to make kids learn and learn without knowing that they're doing their homework while eating.
you kind of sneak it in there under the donut, right? Okay.
Well, this is awesome. Where do people find your kits?
So they can find it on imthechef2.com, and we're also on Amazon. So check us out. We're a subscription-based company as well as a la carte. So come see us at I'm the Chef 2.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Scott. So we need to go to a break. Listeners, you've been listening to Passage to Profit, Road to Entrepreneurship with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart. Our special guest today, Tim McConnehey. And you can find our podcast tomorrow if you missed any of it. And we'll be right back.
There is a fascinating book I finally got around to reading. It was written almost 60 years ago, and it was called Understanding Media by a professor named Marshall McLuhan. Believe me, if there's one thing this man did not understand, it was media. The poor thing spends an entire book trying to convince us that the newest form of electronic media, which back in those days was television, is actually serving to divest us of our independent capability of thought and action as a people, and only serves to turn us into some kind of mind slaves in the process of aiding and abetting the electronic message in its own right. Come on, did you ever? You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go on Facebook and write a couple of paragraphs of just what I think about this. Then I'm going to go onto Twitter and form my thoughts into one of those little 4-word captions and let people know. Next, I'm going to go onto Instagram and take a photograph of his book and post it next to a photograph of a mushroom cloud. I think that'll really convey the message that Oh, I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking, and I can tell you right now, it's not true. My television is in another room entirely. It's not even plugged in. And I don't even have cable.
Welcome back, everybody. It's Passage to Profit, and what an amazing show we've had so far. Now it's time to get to know our guests a little bit different way. This is the brainchild of Elizabeth Gearhart, and who's our co-hosting. And so we have the question of the week. And what is the question of the week this week?
So I'm going to ask Tim first. Tim, if you were to write a book about yourself, what is one of the most important things that would need to be in there?
You know, I think one of the most important things that would be in there is to embrace challenges, embrace when everything is going wrong. It just makes you stronger. I love it when things go wrong, because just as I'm the Chef 2 is just saying, you're able to look back and look at those times where you're like, hey, there's no way out, but there really is. And it makes your business better. It makes you better as a person. You know, I've hit those pivotal moments in my life, and I've been able to reach out and find the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program, which put me on a foundation to then, in April, graduate from Harvard Business School and with a certificate in Owner's President Management. It's been through those times of adversity that it's made me a better person. And so that's what would go in my book.
Excellent. Jordan, what about you? What would be the most important thing in a book about you?
Outside the box wins. Sort of this intersection of two different categories, right? Pharmaceuticals and textiles has not been easy, but I think looking at how do we think differently? How do we try to solve problems that haven't already been solved is what's allowed us to be successful as a business. And I think that's a lesson for everything, right? What are the problems in my life or in other people's lives, and go out and think differently and solve it. And I think if we can all do that, the world will be a better place.
Excellent. Thank you. What about you, Scott?
Yeah, great question. I would say never give up. The life is always going to throw something at you. It's adapting and overcoming problems so that you can be a better you. And so we've had lots of those in our lives with Lisa and I. And it's always just never give up and just positive outlook. You can solve the problem.
Yeah, seems to be a theme. What about you, Richard?
Well, I mean, I like all of those, those points. And, before the discussion started, I was really thinking, you can grow, you can become more effective, you can acquire more skills. And, that's part of the fun of the entrepreneurial journey is just kind of comparing where you are now to where you were when you started all of this. And I can certainly say that I'm a different person compared to the person I was 15 years ago. And I like to think that I've, at least in some ways, I've improved a little bit. Although I have lost some hair and I'm been eating a few too many donuts, but aside from those things, from the mental part, I think I've changed and improved.
Well, and for me, I have to go along with our presenters. To me, I think life is a series of solving problems with some joys thrown in, right? So that would be mine. Living is solving problems constantly, as little as which shirt do I wear today to which company do I invest my money in, right? So that's what it is. But we have the joys thrown in as well. So
that's good. So let's wrap it up.
Yeah, so let's go through one more time who was on the show. So our guest was Tim McConnehey, publishing technology expert, founder of Izzard Inc. Publishing, and you can find him at izzardinc.com.
Yeah, he wrote the book on writing the book.
And then we have Jordan Schindler with Nufabrx, Nufabrx.com. Truly cutting edge, out of the box technology that everybody's going to love. Right?
Absolutely. If you want to see what the future looks like, look up Jordan Schindler on the internet in the dictionary. He'll be right there.
Yes. And then we had Scott Wallace with I'm the Chef Too. And his website is I'm the Chef Too. I am the chef, TOO.com. Really super creative, next generation baking kits for kids that they're just going to love. What a fun activity to do with your kid.
Absolutely. And, STEM, we're all about STEM here. Anything that we can do to slip science in, even without the kids noticing it, is really a big plus for us and everybody else. So,
yes.
So, unfortunately, it's time for us to sign off, and we'll be back to the station next week with another episode of Passage to Profit. But before we go, I'd like to thank the Passage to Profit team, Noah Fleischman, our producer, Alicia Morrissey, our program director, and Kenya Gipson from iHeart. Our podcast can be found tomorrow. Anywhere you find your podcast, just look for the Passage to Profit show. And don't forget to like us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And remember, while the information provided during this program is believed to be correct, never take a legal step without first checking with a legal professional. That's it for this week. Signing off from Passage to Profit.